1987 was a very important year for films about the Vietnam War. It was the year that Oliver Stone's Platoon won Best Picture. Not only was this the first time a movie about the Vietnam War had won Best Picture, but it was the last film about modern warfare to do so until The Hurt Locker won 13 years later. And while Platoon had technically been released the year before, 1987 saw an upsurge in Vietnam War films. Stanley Kubrick released Full Metal Jacket, arguably one of his best films. Robin Williams starred in Good Morning Vietnam, which ended up being the fourth highest grossing film of the following year. And John Irvin released Hamburger Hill. Just like with Platoon, Hamburger Hill was made by people with personal experiences in the Vietnam War. The film's producer, Marcia Nazatir, was the mother of a Vietnam War veteran, and writer James Karabastos had served in the 1st Cavalry Division. John Irvin had filmed documentaries on location and so brought his own memories to the film. Hamburger Hill is named for the battle site which was defended ruthlessly by North Vietnamese forces against the Americans and their South Vietnamese allies. The movie follows a group of soldiers who are fighting to capture the vantage point. Like Platoon, we're given gritty shots of war which don't always show which side is winning or losing. The film stars Dylan McDermott, Don Cheadle, Courtney Vance, and Steven Weber, to name a few. The thing with this movie is that it has great writing and some very impressive scenes between the characters, but while all the actors give good performances, most of them, I found, struggle to stand out individually from each other. But then again, that ties into the effects of the military on individual people, so it ties into the theme at least. And speaking of themes, comparing this to Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, for example, Hamburger Hill is surprisingly the most pro-soldier film of the three. And by that I mean, the film serves as a tribute to what the soldiers of the war put up with as they literally fought an uphill battle. Hamburger Hill focuses most of its outrage towards the racism within the establishment, the anti-war protesters who torment the families of serving troops, and the apathetic news reporters who swoop in for a story even as the battle's going on. The soldiers even compliment their North Vietnamese enemies for at least taking a side. While some people might be offended by these viewpoints, it nevertheless works in the movie's favor. Hamburger Hill knows exactly what it wants to show us. We get introduced to the soldiers as they interact with each other. We see the details of the battle as it plays out. We see several characters die or get wounded, while the survivors are demoralized more and more, as they seem destined to join their fallen comrades. It's a battle of mud, explosions, gunfire, and gore. We see some of the soldiers take some R&R, and we get ideas of their personalities. And slowly, over the course of the film, we see those personalities break down until they're just hollow shells of what they used to be. The war destroys them from the inside and the outside. Hamburger Hill, in essence, shows the carnage of war, the effects on the soldiers, and most of all, the futility of fighting so hard for what is just a small patch of ground in the grand scheme of things. Certainly, it's one of John Irvin's most well-known and overall one of his best films. Unfortunately, his follow-up, well, let's just say it has a less favorable legacy.